there, my name is Victoria and welcome to my channel. Today I am going to be discussing the Chronicles of Narnia books and ranking them, as I have recently reread them as an adult for the first time since childhood. And so I have some thoughts and I'm excited to share them with you. Rereading the Chronicles of Narnia as an adult has just been such an interesting experience. I was surprised at some of the books that I did not enjoy when remembering as a kid that I did enjoy them, and a lot of the details I didn't remember, and it was really interesting to see kind of if they stood up to the test of time for me. But I would still say this is one of my favorite series of all time, but I was surprised at which ones are my favorite ones and which ones I ranked lower. So without further ado, I'm going to be starting with my least favorite Narnia book and kind of discussing them as I go, and we will end with my very favorite Narnia book. Coming in at number 7 is Prince Caspian. First of all, let me just say that I did read these in the chronological order, even though I know many people have said that the publication order is the best way to go, and I think when I reread them again in the future, I will definitely read them in the publication order, not chronologically. So I believe publication order, this is actually number 2, and in the chronological version it is listed as number 4. We spend a lot of time with a dwarf character telling us the story, and we are just listening with the children, with the Pevensie children, to the story. And so I really struggled with staying engaged with that for some reason, and I also found this book to be a little bit disappointing, because when you come from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, I really wanted to be kind of back in the world of Narnia, in like where we left off. But when you get dropped back into the world of Narnia with the Pevensie children, you are actually many thousands of years into the future. And that to me was a little bit sad, because I wanted to revisit some of the characters that we had left in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And so I found that just to be kind of like, I don't want to be here for some reason. So I don't know, for some reason this is the book I also remember the least as far as like plot and story. Now some of this might be because I actually did an audiobook for this, so maybe I wasn't listening properly, maybe I wasn't in the right headspace, but this is the one I just kind of trudged through it, and I did not super enjoy the experience. So there's Prince Caspian at number 7. My second least favorite Narnia book would be The Horse and His Boy. This is chronologically listed as book 3 in the series, and actually I can't remember the publication order. I want to say it's book 5 in publication order. I think that might be right. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Horse and His Boy I remembered as being my least favorite Narnia book, because when I was a kid I thought this one was the most boring. I don't think I totally understood the storyline throughout reading it either as a kid. However, I liked it a little better this time around. I will say, I think the downfall of this book is that we don't get to spend a lot of time, or really any time, in Narnia, actually. However, I think a lot of people would argue that that's one of its strengths, is that you get to see the outside world beyond Narnia. And so for that aspect, I actually liked that a lot more. However, I do miss Narnia when I'm reading this book. I also found this to be a little bit racist, and definitely it's politically incorrect in so many ways. We follow the world of Calormen, and C.S. Lewis definitely draws parallels between Calormen and an Arab nation, and he is a little bit, I think, insulting in some of the ways he portrays the Calormens as, like, you know, barbarians. So that was a surprise and something I have to reconcile with C.S. Lewis, because I didn't ever realize any kind of racism in his books, and that definitely comes through in The Horse and His Boy. And so you just have to remember when you're reading them that they are written in the 50s by a white Englishman, and you have to kind of just keep that in mind if you want to not take these too seriously in that regard. but I still really enjoyed the storyline, and I thought this was one of the funnier books between the banter between Shasta and the talking horse Bree. I really liked them together. I really liked the female character of Aravis, although I found the whole Aslan attacking her thing really weird, and I didn't quite understand the purpose of that. I just found it kind of jarring and scary. So yeah, The Horse and His Boy is just one that I have really mixed feelings about, and I feel really confused about it. However, I enjoyed the storyline more than Prince Caspian, so it is at number 6 in my ranking. In spot number 5, I'm going to be putting The Last Battle, which is the concluding book in the Chronicles of Narnia. Now, this, I remember as a kid that I liked this one, and I don't know if I just didn't really grasp, well, I'm sure I didn't grasp all the themes in it, but reading it as an adult and seeing all the ties between this book and the Book of Revelation was super interesting, and just the way that C.S. Lewis does it. That being said, this book is super bleak and really dark and just a different tone than any of the other books in the series. It's violent, it's sad, it's devastating, really, and it's just unlike any of the other books. Now, for that reason, I actually like that, but it also feels a little bit out of character in some ways. The redeeming part of this book is the last third of it. The conclusion of this book, I think, is some of C.S. Lewis's best work. I think it completely encapsulates what he's trying to accomplish with his series, and it is just really emotional, and I loved the ending. But I think as a kid, I really just liked the unicorn. And I liked this cover because this cover is pretty cool and epic, and then also super disturbing for a kid's book because he has blood on the end of his unicorn horn there. So I just really remember as a kid this being a really whimsical one and really playing with my imagination. And as an adult, it did too. However, as an adult, I could definitely draw the parallels and see where the story was going, and kind of an apocalyptic kind of story. But the last third of the book is just a perfect conclusion, I feel, to this beautiful series. Coming in at spot number 4, I'm going to be putting The Magician's Nephew, which I read first in my reread because, again, I read it chronologically. However, I believe this is actually book number 6 in publication order. I really enjoyed this one, and maybe I was a little bit more biased towards it as well because it was my first book that I reread, and I was just really excited to reread the Chronicles of Narnia. But also, I really like the magic system that happens in this with the trees and the pools. I just thought that was really cool. And they basically touch the rings of these trees and then they get transported to Narnia. The books that I rated higher have more creative ways of how the kids get to Narnia. I feel like in some of his books, C.S. Lewis is a little bit lazy with how the kids get to Narnia. Sometimes they just get whooshed there. And sometimes he has really cool explanations of how they get to Narnia. So that's an aspect of this I really like. I really like the creation story of Narnia and the whole scene where Aslan is talking life into Narnia for the first time. I thought that was a really beautiful and interesting scene. And I also like the humor in this book. This is also one of the only books where we spend a lot of time in England, and that some of the Narnia characters kind of cross over to the world of England. And that to me makes this book different. And I liked seeing that, kind of the two worlds meshing together, and to see what the English people would think if a character of Narnia crossed over into their world. So I just thought that was really humorous, and I just enjoyed reading that very much. Also, one of my favorite scenes in this book is when Diggory and Polly are walking into the hall where all the kings and queens are made of stone and they're all frozen. And I just thought that the imagery of that scene was really cool, and just them walking through this kind of abandoned / dilapidated castle with the kings of old. That's just a scene that has always stuck in my mind. All right, in spot number 3, we're getting close to the end. in spot number 3, I'm putting The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Is it my favorite book in the series? No. I was surprised about that. I actually thought this might be my favorite book in the series. However, upon rereading it, I feel like there's parts of it that kind of drag. What I appreciate about this book is, again, the originality and the creativity of how the kids get to Narnia and how they discover it. And of course, Mr. Tumnus is one of my favorite characters in the series, and so Mr. Tumnus is a super important character in this book, and it's just a classic in every way, shape, and form. And so I had to rate it high up on my list because in my mind, this is Narnia. You know, this is quintessential Narnia, and this is where it all starts. So I just have to pay homage to this book as a monumental start in a beautiful series. My second favorite is a surprise to me because this used to be my favorite. And honestly, I think I could kind of interchange the top 2 depending on the given day. But I'm going to say second favorite as The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Now, I thought this was my favorite book when I was a kid. I think because of the whole we are at sea, and I also really liked how they got to Narnia in this one. They stare at the picture of the boat, and then they basically just get like sucked into the picture. I loved that as a kid, and I still love that. What I had not realized was how anecdotal this is. This isn't really like a very unified story. It's more like every chapter we visit a different island or we have a different adventure. And so I really liked the anecdotal kind of style. It was different than the others. A little bit less cohesive, but more like chapter book kind of thing. But I loved the adventures, and I was always looking forward to seeing what they were going to be doing next. And I also think the ending of this is very emotionally impactful, and I really liked the ending. So I enjoy being at sea. We have Eustace in this book is introduced, who is maybe my favorite Narnia character. And the opening chapter is just like the picturesque C.S. Lewis humor. There was a boy called Eustace Clarence Scrubb, and he almost deserved it. His parents called him Eustace Clarence, and his masters called him Scrub. I can't tell you how his friends spoke to him, for he had none. And I just love Eustace's growth and how his experiences shape him into being a not so selfish kid. He starts as just a selfish little brat, and then he has some life experiences, and he changes for the better. And I liked Eustace a lot. So number 2, surprising me. I thought it was going to be number 1, but that leaves us to spot number 1, which is The Silver Chair. I had to really think about why this was my favorite one, because I do think there's some parts of this that drag. I would say kind of towards the end, I felt like it dragged a little bit, but I think what I liked about this book is the whimsy. This is a really whimsical story with really whimsical characters, and I love that. That's one of my favorite things. In fact, that's something I also like about The Last Battle, is because of very like whimsical characters, and we get a lot more like talking animals and things in The Last Battle. But the Silver Chair has one of my favorite creatures in the world, which is Puddleglum. And Puddleglum is just kind of like, he reminds me of Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh in a lot of ways. Kind of like, well, I guess if I have to, I'm gonna go with you guys, and I guess if we have to do this. And he's very like pessimistic about their adventure and everything, but he also delivers one of my favorite speeches in any of the books, and it's when he's talking to the queen. There's an evil queen, of course. There's many evil queens in Narnia, and she tries to convince the kids and Puddleglum that Narnia doesn't exist, and she kind of tries to like Jedi mind trick them into saying like, the only reality is the reality you see. There is no Narnia, there is no Aslan. And it's one of my favorite moments when Puddleglum gives this kind of big speech to the queen and says, well, if it's make-believe, then I would rather believe in the make-believe. And kind of like there's more beauty in that world, and I'm gonna hold on to that beauty. But I'll just read you a little snippet because it's like one of my favorite Narnia passages of all time. But he says, "Suppose we have only dreamed or made up all those things. Trees and grass and sun and moon and stars and Aslan himself. Suppose we have. Then all I can say is that, in that case, the made-up things seem a good deal more important than the real ones. Suppose this black pit of a kingdom of yours is the only world. Well, it strikes me as a pretty poor one. And that's a funny thing when you come to think of it. We're just babies making up a game, if you're right. But 4 babies playing a game can make a play world which licks your real world hollow. That's why I'm going to stand by the play world. I'm on Aslan's side, even if there isn't any Aslan to lead it. I'm going to live as like a Narnian as I can, even if there isn't any Narnia." One of my favorite passages ever. I also thought this was a really good balance of adventure and humor. This is one of the funnier books also, I would say. So I guess that's also what I like in some of the Chronicles of Narnia books that are my favorite, is there's a good humor streak in them. So yeah, the silver chair, I think, is my favorite. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. I should probably say I was actually inspired to do this video by Megan Hanet and Sarah Hanet and Naomi. They actually did a video like this with all 3 of them, and I really enjoyed that video. And I was reading the Chronicles of Narnia, and I was like, I need to do something similar. So I'll link theirs down below if you want to check out how they rated the Chronicles of Narnia books. I thought it was really interesting to see how all 3 of them had just different placements of the books. So that's linked down below if you want to check them out. But there you have it. I'm so glad that I reread the Chronicles of Narnia as an adult. I really want to reread them again. I can't wait to pick them up again in the future. Maybe in a couple years I'll do it again. But yeah, it's just been such a great experience. I'm so glad that I reread them. Let me know what your favorite Narnia book is, or what your least favorite Narnia book is. Thank you so much for watching my video today, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. I post videos every week. Keep reading great books, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.